Yes, Capital Punishment is a Bad Public Policy by Julia, Garrett, Chance, Summer, and Savannah. A brief history. Capital punishment has been used in the United States since the colonial period. When European settlers came to the New World, they brought the practice. The first recorded execution in the new colonies was that of Captain George Kendall in the Jamestown colony of Virginia in 1608. The primary means of execution in the U.S. has been hanging, electrocution, the gas chamber, firing squad, and lethal injection. In 1982, the first ever execution in world history by lethal injection took place in Texas. This quickly became the preferred method, replacing the electric chair. The most recent case of capital punishment was Dustin Higgins, January 16, 2021, who died of lethal injection following the resumption of executions under Trump administration. Definitions: Capital punishment. The process of sentencing convicted felons to death for serious and capital crimes, then carrying out that sentence through the death penalty. Death row consists of the convicted, incarcerated felons that are sentenced to death and are awaiting their execution dates. The Eighth Amendment prohibits the use of cruel and unusual punishment on criminal defendants imposed by federal government, either as a price of obtaining pretrial release or as punishment for crimes and conviction. The 14th Amendment. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Where is capital punishment legal? Globally, China leads the world with thousands of executions per year. In total, 88% of all recorded death penalty executions have been conducted by Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Iraq. As shown in the photograph to the right, 19 countries around the world have abolished the death penalty. As of 2021, the U.S. still has 27 states that legalized the death penalty. The other 23 states have abolished the penalty, or on an interim period. Locally, the states that conduct the most death penalty executions is Texas, with 841 since 1930 and 563 since 1976. States where the death penalty is legal, illegal, and on moratorium. The United States was ranked 6th for the number of executions in 2019. The nation's stance is divided in its usage of capital punishment. As shown, the majority of the states still practice the death penalty. States of Pennsylvania, Oregon, and California have moratorium in place. This is a temporary probation of any capital punishment cases. California currently has the largest amount of death row inmates at 737, a quarter of the national number. Furman v. Georgia. William Furman burglarized a private home, and when he discovered the family during the burglary, he tried to escape and fell. When he fell, the gun he possessed fired and killed a member of the family. Furman was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. After the trial, Furman's case was appealed on the question if the death penalty violated an individual's Eighth Amendment right against cruel and unusual punishment. In 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Furman. The death penalty was a violation of his constitutional rights. The Furman v. Georgia case became a nationally known case that sets precedent of death penalty cases in the present day. Gregg v. Georgia. Troy Gregg was found guilty of murder and armed robbery and was sentenced to death. Gregg appealed on the ground that the armed robbery did not constitute the death penalty ruling, which the Georgia Supreme Court agreed. Later on, Gregg challenged the death penalty ruling for his murder charge, arguing that it was a violation of his Eighth Amendment rights. In 1976, the death penalty was restored to the Gregg v. Georgia case. The ruling determined that some offenses are legally punishable by death if these requirements are met. If states can show that the capital punishment is not arbitrary or discriminatory, and 2, the sentence process is performed to determine guilt or innocence along with the determination of the sentence that occurs. The case of Doug McCrae. James Doug McCrae was a 3-sport athlete with state championships, all-conference, and all-state. He had 7 siblings and was the first and only McCrae child to attend college. In college, McCrae developed a drinking problem, causing him to drop out of college and join the Army. Eventually, he married and became a father but wound up with nothing and moved back home. In October of 1973, Margaret Mears, an elderly woman, was at home when someone broke in, stripped, raped, and beaten her to death. A bloody handprint was found at the scene and matched Doug McCrae. When questioned, McCrae had no recollection of the night in question. McCrae went to trial and was found guilty and sentenced to death. McCrae stayed on death row for 17 years, watching killers like Ted Bundy come and go through death row. After 17 years, the repeated appeals of the Florida State Supreme Court, his death sentence was appealed and gained a life in prison sentence in 1991. In cases like McCrae's, the death penalty was not justified and upheld in court. Is capital punishment a bad public policy? Yes, we believe that capital punishment is a bad public policy. We will prove to you why. Capital punishment is immoral. Morality, the extent to which the action is right or wrong. According to this graph by Amnesty International, it shows that the overwhelming majority of 61% preferred the punishment of murder to be life without parole. In comparison, only 33% would prefer the death penalty, and another 6% being undecided. The American Civil Liberty Union stated, "In civilized society, we reject the principle, morality, of literally doing the criminals what they do to their victims. The penalty of rape cannot be rape, or for arson, the burning down of an arsonist's home. We should not therefore punish the murderer with death. Capital punishment is a barbaric remnant of uncivilized society." Capital punishment is killing innocent people. Nearly 1 in 25 death row inmates are found innocent. To date, 154 death row inmates have been released.
Since 1973, 154 people have walked off death rows around the United States. 154 people, innocent Americans, were set to be executed, but were later found to be innocent.
There's been a long and brutal history of the use of capital punishment, going back to stonings, crucifixions, burning people at the stake, and even modern-day lethal injection and use of the electrical chair. But in the end, the result is still the same.
The U.S. ranked 5th for number of executions. That's right behind China, Iraq, Iran, and Saudi Arabia.
The states with the highest homicide rates are usually the southern states, which also have the highest rate of capital punishment.
4% of all people on death row in the United States are innocent. Another way of saying that is 1 in 25 people are innocent and on death row.
And the cost is extraordinary.
California on its own has spent $4 billion in administrating the death penalty since 1978.
On the other hand, someone who's sentenced to prison for life without the possibility of parole, meaning they're never going to get out, it only costs us about $200,000 to $300,000 per inmate.
The death penalty in the United States is broken beyond repair.
All of this money could be spent on other parts of the criminal justice system, like improving law enforcement on the street, increasing public safety, providing resources to help wrongful convictions.
It's not worth the risk of executing even one innocent person.
If we execute even one person who is innocent because of the death penalty, then we are all complicit in murder.
Capital punishment is expensive. There are numerous factors that drive the legal cost of capital punishment. They include pretrial costs, ensuring evidence and anything else needed for the case is sufficient. Jury selection. It is more time-consuming finding the selection of jurors that are neutral about capital punishment. Trial. It takes 4 times longer than non-capital trials requiring juror and attorney compensation. In addition, the court personnel and the other related costs. Incarceration. Death rows involved solitary confinement in a special facility that requires more security and other accommodations. Appeals. To minimize mistakes, every prisoner is entitled to a series of appeals. These costs are taxpayers' expenses. The average cost of a death penalty case average over $1.26 million. Capital punishment is giving the state the right to extract justice. The idea of capital punishment is to bring closure to families by providing justice to families and friends that have been affected, and the state's version of what justice should or should not be. A University of Minnesota study found that just 2.5% of victims' families members reported achieving closure as a result of capital punishment, while 20.1% said that the execution did not help them heal. Many times, victims' families members felt guilty or shame if the criminal was put to death. However, when the criminal is serving a life sentence in prison, they feel like justice has been rightfully served. Opposing viewpoint. Reasons for capital punishment. Morality. The justice system has been created to instill law and order. When citizens commit the most heinous crimes, such as rape, murder, treason, espionage, they are breaking all codes of morality. Deterrence. When states have the ability to hold citizens accountable for crimes that are committed, people are less likely to commit them. Understanding. Justice. Understanding that once the convicted person has been put to death, he no longer can hurt anyone else. It alleviates the burden knowing that they are gone, while the act of using capital punishment is relatively painless and quick. Conclusion. Although there are opposing views on the death penalty, we believe that capital punishment is immoral and a bad policy. The risks associated with the death penalty far outweigh the benefits. In addition, we also believe that it is a waste of taxpayer dollars. The cost of the death penalty is on average 1,333 times more expensive than the inmate sentenced to life without parole. That funding could be used in different ways to better the criminal justice system. We believe that society is equally as safe if those select people sentenced to death penalty are simply just sentenced to life without parole. We also believe that capital punishment is killing innocent people. In the video shown by the California Western School of Law, they showed that 154 people were sentenced to death row that turned out to be innocent. Statistics have shown that 1 in 25 people on death row are innocent, and we believe it is not worth the risk of killing an innocent person. In the 14th Amendment, it gives anyone the right to live, and capital punishment is a direct violation of that right. In the 8th Amendment, we have the right against cruel and unusual punishment by the federal government. The death penalty is a direct violation of our constitutional rights in these amendments. Here are some of our references, and references continued. Thank you.